Screenagers, welcome back to another episode of the Canon, the only movie podcast providing you with a watch list of the most essential movies ever made. We've got another very fun one today. I've got Pat Brennan of the Commentary Podcast here to discuss Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the great Steven Spielberg movie. Pat, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you for having me. It's going great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm battling. We were talking before we started recording, but I lost my voice over the weekend, and I'm gonna try to battle through. But I think we've got it. This is.
You sound good to me though. So I just got over got over COVID. So we're both in the trenches.
So we're both battling. Yeah, amazing. And we're gonna get through it together. So I'm very excited for this one. Like I said, we're going to be talking Close Encounters of the Third Kind, amazing Steven Spielberg movie from 1977. I think this might be the third or maybe fourth Steven Spielberg movie that we've done so far on the Canon. We've definitely done Jurassic Park and Jaws and Raiders. So yeah, this is number 4. All classics. I mean, he's the best.
He is the best. He is my favorite director of all time. So he's the reason I got into movies.
I love that.
This is going to be great pod.
Sweet. I'm excited to get into all of that with you. But before we start talking, Spielberg in general and Close Encounter specifically, also did mention that you're the host of the Commentary Podcast, which I believe launched earlier this year or maybe late 2023.
Late 2023, yeah.
So for folks who don't know about the show, want to just give us like a quick overview of what you're doing over there with that show, sort of what the whole idea is behind it, how you conceived it, and just like how it's been going so far.
Yeah. So I would say about like 5 months ago, I was watching one of my Blu-rays. I have a massive movie collection, but I was watching one of my Blu-rays, and it was David Fincher's Gone Girl. And I was like, I'm going to put the commentary track on. And I was just sitting there listening to it. It's like, man, I love commentary tracks. And I think what's been lost, especially with streaming movies, like say The Irishman on streaming on Netflix. Mm-hmm. But Netflix is not going to add any special features, any commentary tracks, anything for that. And I was like, I just feel like commentary tracks are something that's missing. It's like kind of like a lost form of like within film. And speaking of Spielberg, he's never done a commentary track, and he said he'll never do one because he doesn't want to do it. So,
oh wow.
But I thought of an idea. I was like, didn't want to be the guy that was like, I'm going to start another podcast. But I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a podcast that just essentially does a commentary track. Like you just sit there and you watch the movie. We press play at the same time and you watch the movie. So I was like, hey, I'll buy a microphone. I'll do it. So I just started doing it. Yeah, my first episode was Halloween. I just did it by myself. Little rough to begin because trying to get the leeway of it.
That's hard.
So then I put out on Twitter, I was like, hey, if anyone wants to join me on doing these watching these movies with me, more than welcome. Got a lot of responses back very fast. And I believe you're going to be on the podcast soon, but that's in the future. So basically what I do is I'll have like a little intro of the movie, basic quick, because these movies could be 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I don't want to spend 30 minutes on an intro. This podcast turns into 3.5 hours. Who's listening to that? So, what I do is just a quick intro of the guest, and then I most likely will be owning the movie. But I'll tell you where it's streaming, where to rent it. People might even have it, so they can just put it in their DVD player, 4K player, whatever they have. So yeah, and then I just do a countdown, like 3, 2, 1, and we both just press play at the same time. So essentially, you would watch the movie while with me and listen to me and a guest just talk about the movie. It's a lot of fun. I love doing it, and it's gotten me to, even while I'm watching it, seeing like we just recorded Collateral today actually.
Oh, nice.
And I had noticed I'd seen that movie 100 times, and I just noticed some things. I was like, oh wait, I'd never even noticed that. I've seen this movie 100 times, and now that I'm just
Mhm.
openly talking about it with somebody, I just noticed the other details that I've never seen before. So yeah, we're on Instagram and Twitter just as T Commentary Pod. So give us a follow. We're on Apple and Spotify, so give us a follow there too. And yeah, that's
Sweet.
the
Yeah.
podcast.
Give it a follow, smash those subscribe buttons, leave those 5-star reviews. It
Yeah.
is a great show. I was listening to your War of the Worlds episode,
Mm-hmm.
and it just it reminds me of when you're just watching a movie with your friends, and kind of just like going back and forth, like a movie that you've both seen 1,000 times, and
Mm-hmm.
just shooting the shit with each other while watching the movie. Very easy, casual, but also informative kind of conversations that I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're having on the show. And like you said, like the DVD commentary is kind of a lost art. Those there are those among us who are trying to keep physical media alive. I've got my small collection. I know that you have a massive DVD
Mm-hmm.
collection. How many DVDs do you think you own?
So I have actually logged, so I have like a running like note on my phone of how like so in case I have so many. So I probably have
Mhm.
over 3,400 now, and that
Oh,
includes
wow.
4Ks, Blu-rays, and DVDs. But the problem I sometimes run into is when I try to like there's a used like bookstore near me. It's called Book
Mhm.
Off. It's in there. There's a bunch in LA area. And they sell used 4Ks, Blu-rays, and DVDs. The problem I run into is I'm like, wait, do I own this movie? so I'm like, so I had to essentially go. It took a long time. I had to log every single movie that I owned. And it's over 3,400. I don't know the exact number. I have to go back and look, but yeah, it's a lot. I own a lot of
Oh my god.
movies.
That's amazing. Dude, I have, like, not even 100, and I feel like that's a ton, and, like, most of my friends think that I have a lot of DVDs, so 3,400 is
yeah,
that's outrageous. But
whenever
that's
anyone
awesome.
comes in, yeah, whenever anyone comes into my apartment, they're like, "Oh, you have a lot of movies," and I'm like, "Oh, you're not even. This is just the living room." So like, I'll take them into
Yes.
it's the movie room, and they're like, they come in, they're like, "Holy shit, dude!"
Is is
Like,
it
yeah,
is it a whole viewing room, or is it just where you house the
it's
movies?
just like it's like a storage, so it's not really like there's no TV in here. It's just where I house
Mhm.
everything, but everything is
Okay.
organized to how I need it to be. I know where everything is. If you mention a movie, I could find it for you in 2 seconds. I know where everything
How
is. It's
how
like
do you
useless
organize it?
information. So it's like it's so I've gotten a lot of I posted this on Twitter in my movie room when when I first made it. It's gotten a lot
Mhm.
better. I've gotten better shelving. I got rightfully ridiculed for some of the stuff. So it's like, okay, I get it. My shelving sucks. But like um
Such a weird thing to get roasted
someone
for.
someone really roasted me on how I organized it and said that it was very like this guy needs help. And I was like, all right, calm down. So I I have it separated like 4Ks are all by themselves, and then it's like Blu-ray
Mhm.
alphabetical, and then I get into like series are in their own thing, horrors in
Mhm.
its own section, like Criterion's in its own section. Then box
Nice.
sets are in their own area, DVDs are in their own area, but it's organized very meticulously, and I'm running
You've
out of
got a
room.
system.
I will say I'm running out of room, so I don't know what I'm gonna do eventually. So,
You'll just have to move to another apartment,
I guess,
right?
or
That's
hopefully
the
own
only
a
option.
house. Hopefully own a
Yeah,
house,
just
but
buy a house. That's the only way to keep the physical media addiction alive.
I'll be like Guillermo del Toro has his own separate house where he has all of his collectibles and all of his
Ye
movie collection. That's gonna be me.
Just a guest house for all the DVDs and collectibles. That's the dream. That
That
really
is
is
the
the
dream.
dream. I live in a tiny New York City apartment, so, you know, the DVDs and Blu-rays that I do have are already starting to take up, like, so much of the limited space, that I have, and, like, I live with my girlfriend, so I feel like
Mhm.
every time I order a new DVD or box set, she's just like, "Where are you going to put that? We just don't have the room for it."
You're just like, don't worry about
So
it.
I'm not quite in your boat yet, but
Oh
I
yeah,
definitely
I'm
feel your
sure.
pain.
I'm sure if she saw this, she'd be like, "No, you're not doing any of this."
Yeah.
So,
I'll show her a picture of your movie room. Babe, this is what I want. This is what I need. This is what I'm working towards. She'd be
like
like, absolutely not.
my entire life has led to this moment. This is what I
Yeah.
need.
So, all right. Speaking of, I feel like around the time that you like first posted the movie room on Twitter, there was a bit of controversy, we'll say. It went a little viral, and
It did.
maybe for the wrong reasons. Can you
It did
quickly,
go.
for maybe any listeners who aren't familiar with the story, just quickly walk us through what happened there?
Yeah. So at the time, I didn't have as many followers as I do now on Twitter, but I just posted. I was like, "Hey, I made this like we have an extra room here," and I was like, "Oh, I have a lot of movies. I'm gonna like make this a movie room." Like, and I would just basically wanted to show off my movie collection. So I posted it, and very quickly, someone I didn't even follow quote tweeted me saying that this is one type of nerd that I will not have sex with. So I was like, okay, and I screenshotted it, and I just was like, I just commented under her thing. Well, that was rather rude, and she immediately blocked me and deleted it. But then I was like, I'm just gonna post this screenshot. In
Mhm.
hindsight, I probably shouldn't have posted the screenshot, but whatever. I posted the screenshot, and I basically was like, every day is like a struggle on this app or something. And
Yeah.
I got that tweet of the screenshot of her saying that got 155,000 likes. I don't know how it went that
Oh
far.
wow.
And it got to the point where I became the villain in the end. So
What?
yeah, but I gained a lot of followers from there. Actually, a lot of people that are really good friends I got
Mhm.
from that tweet now. So it was worth it. But yeah, the infamous movie room. I don't try and post it anymore because I'm not trying to get roasted again. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have, I think I have
That's
some Funko Pops, and I think some people didn't like that. So uh,
okay.
that
That's
was
such a
where,
weird response. It's not like you like actively reached out to her and was like, "Hey, check out my movie room. Like, let's
yeah,
hook up now." It's just
yeah,
you were just
yeah. I was
posting
like,
something really cool.
yeah,
Look, I'm not gonna have sex with you, but I think the movie room is pretty dope.
yeah.
I'll just throw that
So
out there. Yeah,
it's gotten a lot better too. Maybe I have better shelving. Maybe people will like it this time. So
yeah. That was her issue with it.
yeah, that was the issue. It was the shelving. No, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it was the Funko Pops. So it
I
wasn't even
love
that
the
many.
response to that. That was pretty mean. Well, that was
Yeah,
pretty mean.
yeah. And I think she probably was like, "Oh, he actually saw that." Maybe that was a little
Yeah,
mean, but
maybe it was a
and
little mean.
in hindsight, I'm sure like it went so viral that I'm sure she got some. That didn't mean it for
Yeah,
it to go that far, but
she got a bit of
uh,
traction as well, I'm
yeah.
sure. I also
But
like the phrasing, "This is one type of nerd I'll never have sex with," which implies
yeah,
that there are other types of
other
nerds
types of
out there
nerds. Yeah,
that she's like really willing to hook up with.
yeah. So I guess just she doesn't like movie guys. I'm a film bro,
Yeah,
I guess. With my Wong Kar-wai box set, I'm a film bro. So
yeah. We're all film bros at the end of the day, right?
in my Decalogue, the Decalogue criterion. So,
Yeah, that's so film bro. So film bro of you. I feel like okay, we don't have to get too into this because I feel like this is a bit of a tangent, but I do feel like uh I feel like the film bros need to reclaim the word film bro. Like the
mhm.
real film bros. The guys with the Goodfellas and Pulp Fiction and Fight Club posters. They need to reclaim the term film bro from the from the cinephiles who collect Criterion DVDs and are watching like like you said like Bergman
Mhm.
and like Werner Herzog movies and like love Kurosawa and old like samurai films. Those aren't film bros. Those are those are cinephiles. You're like
Yeah.
you with your Decalogue uh box set, you're a cinephile. Okay. The the Marty guys, the guys who watch Wolf of Wall Street and think that um that the Jordan Belfort character is the coolest guy in the world, those are film bros and they need
Those are
to
the film
reclaim it.
bros. They have
We
all of
need
those
to,
posters hanging in their hanging in their apartment.
yeah, we need to reassess who we're calling film bros.
It's funny
That's my
because
little rant on that.
there's three movies. Goodfellas, not my favorite Scorsese movie. Pulp Fiction, not my favorite. Tarantino, and Fight Club is by far not my favorite David Fincher. So I am definitely not a
Yeah.
film bro.
Yeah. Very fair. Very fair.
I mean, I have like High Sierra Criterion like pointing out into the movie room. Like no one probably knows what that movie is. So.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of that movie. Yeah. It's
I
just
don't think I'm a film bro, but I mean, I do love I have very basic top four taste, but like Back to the Future, Raiders, Zodiac, and Fellowship of the Ring. I mean, that's kind of film bro, I would
that's
say,
a little
but
film bro-y.
that's a
That's
little film
teetering.
bro.
Yeah. It's borderline film bro. Yeah, not as problematic as like the other film bro movies, but
Hmm.
dude, but liking basic movies is, I think it's great. They're basic for a reason. Back to the Future is everyone's favorite movie because it's sick, you know?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met anyone that didn't like Back to the Future.
Yeah. You know, it's
So.
silly. We don't have to pretend to be cooler than things that are great.
Exactly.
I love it. So, speaking of great movies, speaking of basic directors, if you go around and say Steven Spielberg is my favorite director, a lot of people will, a lot of film bros, we're saying that with air quotes, will, turn their nose up to you and say, "Oh, that's such a basic pick." But Steven Spielberg is one of the most popular directors of all time in cinema history for a reason, and it's because he's really flippin' good at making
Mhm.
movies. One of those really flippin' good movies is, of course, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is what we're here to talk about. So, Pat, before we get into the movie itself, I know we've kind of mentioned this before. We've been sort of, poking around it, but tell me about your relationship to Spielberg, sort of how you feel about his movies as a whole, where Close Encounters sort of fits into your whole, you know, relationship with Spielberg. Is it your favorite Spielberg movie? Is it, maybe a little bit lower on the list? Just walk me through all of that.
So, basic film bro take. Steven Spielberg is my favorite director of all time. He is the reason I got into movies. Yeah, by far my favorite director, and I guess I have reclaimed the film bro basic taste. But yeah, I just growing up, I just realized I would always go back and rewatch Steven Spielberg either directed or produced movies. Just like they all have the same type of feel to me. They feel like a
Mhm,
movie. Like they feel like this is a movie to me. And speaking of Close Encounters, that actually is not like in a top echelon of Spielberg movies for me, even though I have it like at a 5 out of 5, but it's still not
mhm.
in my top echelon because
That's how
I think
great he is.
he's only really ever made, I would say, in quotations, a bad film. And it's probably 1941, which he made a
Mhm,
few years after this. Um, Actually, I think it was his next movie. Um,
mhm,
but Close Encounters, upon rewatching it recently, I realized like, holy shit, this guy is so good at directing a movie right after Jaws, and to come off of that type of arguably the greatest movie ever made in Jaws to
mhm.
make arguably some people also consider one of the greatest movies ever made in Close Encounters is just a testament to how good he is as a director. And I think he's still, even today, with Post Fablemans and West Side Story, he's still got it. He's still got it way more than some directors do.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, it's some people will consider it a basic opinion, but you look at the guy's body of work and he's got just about as many masterpieces as anyone. His movies feel like movies. He makes great movies that are emotionally rich. They're like artistically complex, but also like super accessible to someone who, has seen someone who watches 500 movies a year, but also someone who watches like 10 to 15 movies a year. You know, he's able to speak to both of those groups and everyone in between. And you know, I think that being able to have mass appeal doesn't necessarily take away from Spielberg. If anything,
Hmm.
it just speaks to how great he is at making movies.
Hmm. Especially
It's
because people like they don't know a name like Michael Curtiz. They would be like, I don't know who
mhm,
that is, even though he made Casablanca. But like
mhm, yeah,
they don't know who that guy is. But if you mention Steven Spielberg, they'd be like, oh, I know who that guy is. Like even if they
yeah,
showed you a photo, like I know that's Steven Spielberg. And like you said, the testament to how big he is to continue to deliver time after time just shows how he arguably is one of the greatest directors to ever do it. If you like, again, he's so high up, you have to continue to deliver because if you don't, you're going to be like, oh, he sucks, he's overrated. And I'm sure there are people that do think he is overrated, but I don't, and he's great. So
I love it. I also think he's great. This movie is one of his. It's like, I mean, I guess it depends on the person. You know, some people will definitely list it as their first, you know, favorite Spielberg movie. For me, it's maybe like somewhere in like the 5 to 7 range, but like
Mhm.
still an amazing piece of cinema and filmmaking. Do you remember the first time that you watched this movie? Do you like have a specific memory tied to that, or is it one of those movies that has just sort of like always like existed in your life?
I don't like really fully remember the first time I watched it. It definitely was a little later in life. It wasn't like a Spielberg movie like Indiana, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws,
Hmm.
E.T., like those movies. And then, which is funny because it came out around those times, but it wasn't a movie that I would go back and rewatch all of the time. But every time I watched it, I was like, damn, that's a good movie. But again, like you're saying, it falls like it's probably like number 10 of mine of Spielberg's movies, like probably 10th, like his 10th
Hmm.
best that I think. Um, but yeah, it's just but then again, when I rewatch it, I'm like, damn, maybe it is higher. I don't know. Like it's like because like what I love, and we can get into it more. What I love about how the story is completely structured is like and I've noticed it on the rewatch. I was like, damn, like for the first 3 quarters of this movie, you think it's an entirely different movie until you get to the very, very end, and you're like, wow. Basically, this whole movie is about communication when it could have easily gone somewhere else. Like so,
Yeah,
uh,
that's
it's
such a good point. Well,
yeah.
why don't you? I mean, we let's talk about the structure now, since you brought it up. Like, what
Yeah.
specifically about the structure of the movie? Like, do you think that that's the most impressive piece of the filmmaking, or do you think it's just like another, you know, another part of the puzzle of like what makes it so great? Like, what is it about the structure specifically that you love so much?
I think that's why whenever I rewatch it, I'm like, damn, this is great because from what I think the first like 3 quarters of that movie is, it's a horror film because
Mm.
they don't understand what's happening and they make it seem, especially when and it's Spielberg's favorite shot of all time when the kid opens the door and the light is right there and they
Oh,
essentially
it's
capture the
amazing.
child. They essentially capture the child, and that whole sequence is like everything's in the house is shaking. Like it would be terrifying. It's terrifying to see. And then the kid gets taken, and the mom's running after it. You're like, this is a horror movie. Like this is
Yeah.
literally a horror movie. And a big emotional thing for Spielberg, which has always been in his movies, is the family dynamic. And
Hmm.
you're watching a man essentially like just leave his family because he's just so invested in this thing that essentially touched him. So now he's essentially going crazy. He's going crazy, like he's in a horror movie, and he's like building this mountain in the garage. Like people are watching him just essentially go nuts for they have no idea why, and like the destruction of the family dynamic, which was a big part of Spielberg's life in general, which he addressed essentially in The Fablemans, um,
Hmm.
could be considered a horror type of thing too within the family, like a perfectly like all American, not all American, but like a suburban family, like two
Yeah.
kids. and like mother, father, and just the destruction of that on top of this alien invasion that's happening, but they don't know what it is. It just, to me, the first three quarters all are about like, it just feels like a horror movie because half the
Yeah.
time you're going through like a chase scene, they're capturing people because they think they're infected. But yeah, I've always thought it was like it is a horror, and then you get to the very end, it's like, oh, we're just little aliens like saying hi, like,
Yeah.
like
They're just cute. They're just cute little guys. They just want to say
yeah,
what's up.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then it's like, oh, here's everybody we captured. They're
Yeah.
just saying hi, like.
Yeah. We were just hanging out, you know. We had some ice cream up in the ship. It was a good time. That's such a good point. I've never like really read it as a horror movie, at least in like the first part of it. I guess I've always been so focused on the sci-fi element
Mhm.
of it that I never. But it is really scary. Like that sequence that you're talking about with the kid getting abducted is legit terrifying, and that shot of him opening the door is one of the most insane shots in movie history.
Oh yeah,
Um, like I feel
iconic.
like that shot alone is what won this movie best cinematography at the
Oh,
Oscars.
definitely. Yeah,
Or
because
it's like,
Spielberg has said like that shot, and then in Jurassic Park when the T Rex puts his foot down on like the mud right in front of them, like that's his other favorite shot
yeah,
like of all time. Yeah, he loves that the kid opening the door because he says like he felt like it was him because he would always like go out exploring as like a child, like he was always just fascinated to like be outside, and
yeah.
he felt like that was him opening the door, and because he even says like it's a terrifying shot. Like, so
Do y- do you think that this is the most personal movie for Spielberg? Like, do you think that this movie features the most of himself in
I
it?
would say this, I would probably disregard Fableman's because that's kind of too on the nose of his life.
Yeah.
Um, I would say this and probably ET because
Hmm.
it's the main functions of those movies are how the family is essentially decaying, um, and there's no essentially home structure, which he thought that he was lacking in his life because his parents would always be like fighting and everything, and
Yeah.
he had deep resentment towards that relationship, and I think he takes that family dynamic and builds off of it, and then adds in like, say, okay, now we're gonna bring aliens in. We're gonna bring again
Yeah.
ET. We're gonna bring in an alien,
Hmm.
like connecting with something that's outer worldly in a way. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of people have the problem with Spielberg is that his endings are always like too like hopeful, like they're too family hopeful, as opposed
Hmm.
to like say like in ET, like especially everyone's like kind of coming back together at the end. Close Encounters, like, oh,
Hmm.
we just want to talk about communication. Like, we're actually really nice people. Like, come and join us on our alien adventures now. Like,
Hmm.
and I think that's where
Yeah.
some people do have a critique of him, where he's like too like blockbuster family person. But then again, he can reinvent himself and make Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then they'd be like, "Oh, he can only make blockbusters," and they're like, "Okay, well then I'm going
Yeah.
to make the color purple and shut you all up." So
Yeah.
I
Uh,
just
his range
he's
is
so
insane.
versed. His range is insane. He knows how essentially like the family dynamic works, and when it is like decaying, essentially when there's divorce happening, dad's going
Hmm.
crazy. He doesn't even care about it doesn't seem like he even cares about his family anymore. Um, that to me it could be considered like a horrific thing within the family, like your dad just left, like he's just gone, like,
Yeah.
and it's, which is weird because would have that type of character then essentially be the main character in the end to be like, oh, I'm going to go with these aliens that are actually like helping us. And it's interesting to just you frame that character who kind of just abandons his family to then go essentially be a part of this other outer worldly thing, which it's kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the ending is both very hopeful, but also pretty tragic
Hmm.
in that it ends with a father fully leaving his family. And the whole movie is really building up to a point of the father is he's continuously slipping into this obsession with the aliens and figuring out what's going on, and what his encounter was all about. And his family leaves him, and at the end, you'd maybe think that the Hollywood ending would be he like sees the mothership, and at the last moment he decides, as much as I want to go, I really need to be there for my wife and my kids. And he decides to, stay, and he goes back to them, and they're all reunited, and it's happy, happy, happy in that regard. And you kind of get the best of both worlds. But it works so well that the ending here is him leaving, and in a lot of ways it doesn't feel as tragic as a father fully leaving his family like should.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is because for so much of the movie, we're really just like watching him go on this obsessive journey that is like borderline spiritual. And so at the end he gets his spiritual gains, but it's like at what cost, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is the troubling thing. But I read an interesting quote about just sort of like the whole family dynamic within the movie, and I want to get your thoughts on this. But uh, Danilo Castro from Next Best Picture wrote that the movie, it's about families being broken apart and coming back together. But you have the mother character looking for the son, and the father abandoning the family, which kind of, with everything that we know about Spielberg's history and his family relationship, that's kind of like how he viewed his parents, with like his mother being the one to reach out to him and the father being the one who leaves them all behind. And it is
Mm-hmm.
really interesting that like B plot is about a mom whose kid gets abducted, and she's just going to the aliens to get her kid back. She doesn't have the same kind of obsession that Dreyfuss's character has. She's simply going to get her son back. So I was curious what you think about all of that, and sort of like the mirroring of how Spielberg sees his parents, and how those two characters specifically sort of play out in the movie.
Yeah. Which is interesting now that I think about it, because the mother that's trying to find her son, there is no dad in that household either.
Yeah.
So essentially, you're taking essentially two families. One's already been broken, and one is breaking. And you kind of, maybe if you had never seen this movie before, hint that, oh, maybe these two are going to connect now, and they're going to become like
Hmm.
a, like a together unit. And again, no, this guy is just so set on leaving. And I wouldn't be surprised if Spielberg thinks that probably Close Encounters is the most personal movie to him, because I'm sure he probably doesn't see it as an alien invasion. Again, he sees it as this is about families being broken essentially, and
Hmm.
only one, it connects back together. She gets her son back, but one is broken, and not every family is going to have a happy ending. Even if, say, the father did come back, there could still be some sort of struggle there, and eventually the family does break apart in the end. And the more I think about it, the most important scene probably in this movie is when they're at the dinner table, and he's like
Hmm.
playing around with like the mashed potatoes,
Oh
and
my God,
the
that
whole
scene is
family is
so
just
good.
silent, staring at him, realizing that he's clearly like, they don't know what's going on with him, because he's obviously been now like touched by the aliens, so he just keeps seeing things and seeing all this stuff that they can't see. And
Hmm.
but in their minds, they're seeing that it seems like he's just having like a complete mental breakdown, and they're watching their father just lose it. So in their minds, they're losing it, and they're emotional. And I think that is the most important scene, because there's like no dialogue in it at all. And it's just, they're just
Hmm.
sitting there watching this guy, their father and husband, just essentially like, they're like, we've lost him. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I have to get out of here. And
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking to see that in a movie. You're like, oh, I thought this movie was about like aliens, like someone, but like it's
Yeah.
not about aliens. Like, it's about
No, it's totally about
a lot
the
of other
family
things.
dynamic.
Yeah.
I know we said that the shot of the kid opening the door with the aliens outside in the red light, and all that stuff is probably the most iconic shot. of the movie, but I do think maybe the most powerful shot of the movie is in that dinner table scene where it's that split shot of Richard Dreyfuss's Roy character in the foreground, just like mesmerized by the potato mountain that he's sculpting.
Hmm.
And I think it's his oldest son is in the background, and you can just see him like he just starts to like breaking down and crying because he's like, my dad is gone. Like my dad is like
Hmm.
so far gone. There's like no hope of him like being the present dad that I once knew. And to me, that's the most heartbreaking shot in the entire movie.
Hmm. Oh yeah, no, I'm
It's so
sure
powerful.
that's is basically Spielberg himself. He probably would say that's me watching my family break down, and I can't do anything about it. So it's yeah, it's heartbreaking to see in a science fiction movie. So
Yeah. This is one of those movies where the rest of the filmmaker's filmography and just like personal history really changes and recontextualizes how we watch it. Like I feel like rewatching this movie after having seen The Fablemans, it makes so much more sense
mhm.
than any of the times that I watched it pre Fablemans. And there was that great clip when uh, The Fablemans was out and people were talking about Spielberg. There was that great clip from him on Inside the Actors Studio where James Lipton was like, "So in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, your your mom was a music teacher and your dad was a computer scientist, and the aliens communicate with their computers through music. The movie was about reconciling like the differences with your parents." And Spielberg was like, "Yeah, I had no idea that I was actively doing that, but it makes
Yep.
so much sense."
Mhm.
um, and then you watch The Fablemans, and it totally recontextualizes the way that we watch this movie.
Mhm. Yeah, and even like when he was making the Fablemans, like some of the actors would say, like in the middle of them, like him directing them, he would just like stop and like he's like, just I need a minute, and like he would just need to like walk away because he's realizing like I've been directing this my whole life, and now that
Hmm.
I'm actually directing it, I'm coming with all of these emotions, being like, this is essentially what I have been directing. Because when you watch the Fablemans, you're like, I mean, these themes have been in all of his movies, just like essentially broken families and broken people, and you're
Hmm.
trying to find a fix somewhere. And again, like you said, he didn't even realize that he put music and and like computer communication together. Like I didn't even think of that because like I've always thought of that, but
Yeah.
at a deep down, like deep down, I didn't realize like what I was doing. So it probably takes him a long time until someone even points it out to him, or be like, "Oh yeah, like it's clearly about me, like
Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
about me." Like,
And
I
I
mean, to
think
go
I think
from Jaws to this, like you're hitting home run after home run, and then his next movie is when he falters and
mhm.
has to reinvent himself again, and I think that's a testament to how good he really is. So it's
Yeah, and then he
incredible.
has that an insane run through the 80s, through the 90s.
Yeah.
Releases Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same calendar year. One of the most outrageous things that any director has ever done. And then he's still pumping out hits with West Side Story and The Fablemans.
Yeah.
Like
He still releases he's done it to like multiple times though, 2 movies in a
yeah,
year. It's Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, insane.
yeah. So he's so good. I think so on the how personal this movie is to Spielberg topic. I think another reason for that is I think this is the only movie that he has sole writing credits for. Um, so you can tell that this is really like a passion project for him, something that
Mhm.
he feels super deeply, is very personal to him. Do you have any familiarity with like the different cuts and versions of this movie that he like played around with afterwards? Have you seen any of those different versions, or are you only familiar with like I guess like the 77 theatrical release standard cut?
I think the first cut I definitely saw of it was just the theatrical. I own the 4K, which comes with the theatrical, the director's cut, and like I guess the collector's edition cut.
Hmm.
Um, off the top of my head, I don't remember what all of the differences are. But
Yeah.
whenever I see a director's cut, I'm gonna lean that way because that's what the director wants me to see. This is
Yeah.
like his final cut of the movie. But yeah, the differences, I don't really remember how much difference there is in most of it. I think there's just maybe a few extended scenes from the theatrical to the director's cut. But I personally don't even, I own it, but I don't think I've ever actually seen the collector's edition cut of the actual movie.
Got it. So it seems like the director's cut is probably the best bet for this movie.
Hmm. I think it's the best bet if you ever see any director. Like, speaking of a director's cut, like I still have not seen Napoleon or the Rebel Moon that came out. If you're telling me
Mm,
if there's a director's cut coming out, I'm gonna wait for that because that's the
yeah.
actual movie. That's the actual movie that we're supposed to be watching, and that's why Scorsese's movies are always long because they're the
Hmm.
director's cuts. He's
Yeah.
always
The
fought
first
so
version is the
long
director cut.
is the
Yeah.
director's cut. That's his. That's the cut of the movie that should be released. And
Yeah.
Spielberg has done a good job where he doesn't really have director's cuts because he knows he knows how much an audience can wait around for before they start to
Hmm.
be like, I'm getting bored. Unless you're like a huge into movies, you're going to be there no matter what. But 99% of audiences are like, after 2 hours, they're going to be looking at their watch, being like, how long is this movie?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what he's really good at with like confining an entire story within where he knows audiences are going to
Yeah.
either go be along with a ride or this is lingering too long. We need to cut some of this stuff down. And I don't think rarely has many deleted scenes either. So he shoots what he
No.
wants to shoot, and I think this might be besides maybe Duel. I think there's a director's cut, but I think this might be the only movie where he really has an actual director's cut
Yeah.
for the actual movie.
I think I read some stuff where when the movie was released, he felt that it wasn't his final version. It felt like a work in progress. And I do think
Hmm.
that most of that is due to the fact that he does feel such a strong personal connection to this movie. Not to say that he doesn't have a strong personal connection to a lot of the other movies that he's made, but you know, with all those others, there's a strong feeling of completion and it's finished. But because this movie is essentially about his parents' divorce and like trying to get them back together,
Hmm.
that's always something that he's going to be thinking about. And like, so it makes sense that he will continuously like go back and try to like move things around or cut things out and add more things or whatever it may be. But hey, studios, um, when a director wants to make a movie, how about you let the director make the movie that they want to make, and everything that gets released should just be the director's cut because
Yep.
uh, that's what the auteur wants to make. So that's what audiences should see.
Hey, I agree. I agree. So, 100%.
100. Yeah. Let's talk about the cast because I feel like the cast of this movie is pretty great. Is there a particular role or character or actor or performance in this movie that like sticks out to you maybe more than some of the other ones?
Um, I always, whenever I turn this movie on, I'm like, oh, I always forget Truffaut is in this movie. Like, how the
What
hell
an
did he get
insane get.
France? How did you get Truffaut to be in this movie? Like, I don't understand. Like, that to
So
me, like,
good.
obviously Richard Dreyfuss is like, you would be like, oh, it's Richard Dreyfuss, but I just always laugh. Like, it's Truffaut. Like, it seems like he's having a blast too. Like,
Yeah.
he's always a character I've always loved in this movie, especially from that again from like the opening scene. Like you just see like, is that really is France Truffaut is literally standing right there. Like how does Spielberg be like, hey, I'm like 30, come be in my
Yeah.
movie, Truffaut? Like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll
Apparently
be
he was
there.
great on set and he showed up and he was like, I'm just here to act and take direction from Steven Spielberg. I'm not going to be behind the scenes giving input in terms of like how to direct it or anything. I'm literally just here as an actor, which I feel like is an awesome thing to do as one of the most accomplished directors, rather, of your generation, and you're being directed by yes, Steven Spielberg, who made Jaws and is known around the business to be a great director, but still like mostly unproven and pretty young.
Mhm.
Like that, I mean, that takes a lot of confidence and trust on both of their ends to be able to make that work the way that it did.
Oh yeah, and like because Jaws was technically his third movie, and that production was not easy sailing. So he
Mhm.
still again was had to prove himself again. Like, can you fall? He could have just made Jaws, and then his next movie is like a clunk, and then he's out of the business. He's done, and he basically be like, "All right, well,
Yeah.
I made Jaws, I guess," because people think that Jaws is his first movie, but it's technically his like third movie. But like you're saying,
Yeah.
he still had to prove himself, and then he does
Yeah.
Close Encounters, and you're like, okay, I think this guy's got it. But then after Close Encounters is when he faltered with 1941 because he even said, I tried to make like a slapstick comedy and it just didn't work.
Didn't work because
That's why I don't make comedies. So,
yeah, he's got
uh,
a lot of range, but comedy is not within that range.
yeah, and I do agree. I was like, yeah, I don't think it worked very well. But interesting, Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, who wrote Back to the Future, wrote 1941. So it's also a testament to, and I don't know if Truffaut, he probably was just like, this could be fun. I don't know. It's my only
Yeah.
like English speaking like movie I've ever going to be in. But it, like speaking of like using writers from 1941 on a movie that technically failed, it's a
Mhm.
testament to how Spielberg is still willing to go to bat even after he makes 1941, then it makes E.T. and Raiders of the Lost Ark, to then go back to the writers and be like, hey, I know you're trying to get like Back to the Future being made. I'm
Mhm.
going to help you make that because even though we failed here, I want you to succeed here, and you're going to get all of the credit for this. This is your movie, but I'm going to help you
Yeah.
do this. And that's a testament to him, I think, as a director and a producer, of how he can even say after Jaws, maybe people Truffaut wanted to be like, oh, I love Jaws, I'll be in the movie. Like
Yeah.
he wants me to be in his movie. Awesome, Jaws is
I'm
great. So
there. Yeah.
yeah,
It is it is such a good performance, and you can really tell that he's, he's having fun. He's committed in a really cool way. Like he's locked in a way that he doesn't need to be, but it makes the movie great. I got to give a shout out to my guy Bob Balaban, who's in
oh
this
yeah,
movie. That guy is great, and he's one of those dudes who pops up in everything. He's what my friends and I like to call an "oh fuck yeah" dude.
hmm
Like he's a character actor that when he pops up, you point at the screen and you go, "Oh, this guy's in it. Fuck yeah."
yeah. I think I
Um,
was
love.
rewatching Entourage, and he was in an episode where like Johnny Drama needed to get medicinal marijuana, and he was the doctor. I was like, "Is this Bob Balaban?" He's like only in this one scene, like
Yeah.
he's like just being a medicinal marijuana. It's like, oh, he's great, and I love his beard in this movie.
Great beard. Great opening line. I'm a map maker. Like, cool. Thanks, man. But then it ends up it comes in handy.
Right, just he should have looked at the camera and delivered that. I'm the map
Ye-
maker. Just like
Yeah. And it's like the first line of the movie, and
yeah.
it's like, okay, what does this have to do with aliens? I thought we're doing alien invasion movie, but sure, whatever. Um, so great, and that, yeah, like we mentioned, Richard Dreyfuss, absolutely amazing in the lead role. Apparently, Spielberg's first choice was Steve McQueen, but it didn't work out because McQueen apparently wasn't very good at crying on command on screen. Um, so that fell through the cracks, and then they tried to get, all of the typical big names from the time: Dustin Hoffman,
Mhm.
Al Pacino, Gene Hackman, and but I really think that this movie obviously could work with another person in the role, but Richard Dreyfuss is just so perfect for
Mhm.
this particular role.
No, I agree. Like because he was basically a supporting role in Jaws, and
Mhm.
again, it's like you're gonna now cast him as the lead in your next movie, and you'd be like, oh, people would be like, oh, he was in Jaws, right? I'll go see that. And I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of the movie hinders on his performance of him breaking down is his central part of the whole movie, and he kills it. Like
yeah.
incredible performance, better performance than this in Jaws, in my opinion. So
I would have to agree. I would have to agree. And apparently he campaigned really hard He knew that Spielberg was looking at all of the big name stars, but he kept pushing Spielberg. He was like, "Look, man, I this has to be me. I'm the guy for the role." So obviously, we're all very, very happy that it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about aliens. Let's talk about aliens for a little bit. Do you believe in aliens? Do you think
I
we've
do
made
believe in
contact?
aliens. Yes, I do. And they're already here now. They're already here. No, I always think about it like, look, I mean, I'm not a religious person, and if you are, good, like, yeah, that's fine. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But
Yeah.
I always see it as like, so you're telling me all those things up there, like galaxies have planets. Yeah. And we're the only one that has this. Like, of all of them. It's like, I don't
Hmm.
buy it. Like, there's other
Yeah.
things out there. Like, I don't
There's
buy it.
intelligent life out there
Yeah.
for sure.
And like they find like water on Mars, if you find molecules and like things in the water, then that's technically life on another planet. So I do think
Yeah.
now do the aliens all look like the same as when they draw them in movies and shows and like on like in books, they all have the big eyes. Like, I don't know. They could look exactly like me. Like
Yeah.
they could be like a clone of us, like in the island.
Yeah.
They're just on like instead of underground, they're just on another planet. Like so
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, all the UFO stuff that's come out, like, it's gotta be other
Yeah.
people have been here before.
Absolutely. I don't know if we've made contact, but they're definitely out there. At least I have not made contact. But maybe if I were to make contact, I would I would go crazy and lose my mind and have a new lifelong obsession.
See, this is my brain. I mean, like, wait, do you think they make movies on those planets? Like, can I watch their movies?
Yeah.
Like, how great
Do
would
they
it be? Yeah, they've been making movies for
they have
500
4Ks?
years. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
they got they have 8Ks there. They're
Yeah.
that far ahead of technology.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of lenses they're working with out there.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be crazy. Like, oh,
I'd watch some
imagine
alien
just
movies.
like they have like 500, like they've been doing it for 500 years. Think of all the movies they could have, and you're like, oh man,
Y-
let's go to that
You're gonna
planet.
need a bigger movie room.
Yeah, I have to get it delivered across galaxy. I need
Yeah.
Amazon to deliver across galaxy.
Yeah. Does Amazon Prime still do 2-day delivery when it's
Yeah.
coming from a different galaxy?
And is it 4K?
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. What do you think about this movie not having a real antagonist? Like, there's no bad guys. All of the drama, all of the plot is really just propelled forward by, again, this character Roy,
Mhm.
played by Richard Dreyfuss. Just his obsession with figuring out what exactly it is that he experienced.
Yeah, I think it goes back to like my idea of it like essentially being a horror until the very end. Like you could say that maybe the aliens or the military are the antagonists, like because they
Hmm.
you still don't really know what's going on, and there's not like you said, there's not like a big bad guy like no, we need to do all this stuff like, and I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of these movies, especially when there's alien invasions and aliens in general, where I don't like the trope of like the military is always like they're going to kill us, we need to make a giant weapon to destroy them before they destroy us, and I think that's the point like of this movie. It's like you're leading up to that point where I see it as a horror movie, and you could see the aliens. Like you don't see them; they kidnapped people. They took Richard Dreyfuss's car, threw it up in the air, and like put it back down. Like kidnapped a
Hmm.
child. Like you could see them
Yeah.
as like, oh, maybe they're the antagonists. Maybe they're actually trying to like experiment on these people. And when you
Hmm.
realize they just wanted to communicate the whole time, and maybe the antagonist is humans, as in they're so quick to judge other things that they don't know and want to violently defend themselves as opposed to just, I don't know, maybe just thinking about not doing that. And all he wanted to do was
Yeah.
just like make a song together. Like that's all we did is just
They just
put
wanted
some
to collab.
beats. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, yo, we're just trying to collab across galaxy.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting because like if we think about when this movie came out, right? It's 77, and this movie was like shot before before Star Wars, and I think was originally supposed to come out before Star Wars, but then there were
Hmm.
like delays in the production and stuff, so it ended up coming out later. But in 77, all of the media that we had about aliens up to that point, about aliens coming to our world, were all about them invading and enslaving us and doing weird probing experiments or wanting to obliterate us, and like all of these really scary negative things. There really wasn't a lot out there in terms of nice, alien encounters. There was nothing out
Hmm.
there that was hopeful about what it would mean if intelligent beings from another galaxy were to come here and be with us. I think in a lot of ways, if you are someone who believes that there are other life forms out there, and that there's a possibility that they would, come to this planet, I think that's a pretty cool thing. That's a pretty hopeful thing that should be seen as a positive. And the fact that there was nothing before Close Encounters that displayed that experience in a positive light, or at least explored the potential positive outcome of it, is it does say a lot about us as a society, and sort of how
Hmm.
like messed up we are. But Spielberg sort of changes that. And I brought up Star Wars before because a lot of sci-fi leading up to that point was all very dark, cynical, and both of those movies are extremely anti-cynical in really cool ways. And it's awesome that they came out in the same year. Obviously, I think Star Wars exists on a completely different like plane
Hmm.
because of its cultural impact, but Close Encounters is right up there with it in terms of changing the way that we were able to think about these kinds of movies about this kind of subject matter.
Hmm. Because then if you look at two movies later and makes ET, like it's the same type of like the government is coming after, like there's an alien here, we must
Yeah,
destroy it. And but if really think about it, if the alien is just communicating with this child, and like he's just a nice simple alien that he just, I don't know, he just likes to eat candy. So like
just yeah, he's just a
like
friendly little dude.
yeah,
Yeah.
because if you think, but even before that, like I always think of like the original, the thing from another world, like they just
Hmm.
crash lands, they find the spaceship, and the aliens immediately like attack, attack, attack. And a lot of
Hmm.
that is an allegory essentially for especially American movies of in like we're going to be invaded by some big country like Russia or China or something like that. We must
Hmm.
defend ourselves. And like you look at the birds, like the birds are now just like they're attacking from above. Things are coming
Hmm.
from a space to immediately attack us. And instead, like again, you can have that type of relate of movie here leading up to that very point at the end when you're like, okay, the giant mothership is here now. What's gonna happen? Are they just gonna zap
Yeah,
everybody? No, they just communicating, and you're like, oh, they just wanted to communicate. Like to be like, hey, here's our technology. We should essentially share this stuff and come on and come and join us. Here's all the people we took from you. Sorry we took them, but here they are.
yeah. Sorry we took them, but they're healthy. They're happy. Everything is good.
Yeah, it's because it's interesting you point that out. Like I never actually realized, like I don't think there was a movie before like this that had like essentially an aliens coming and their main thing is just communication, not attack, attack, attack. Because you have like War of the Worlds, the original, like essentially again
Hmm.
attack, attack, attack. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's interesting that he chose to go this route, and I think it has to do with that family communication type of thing. And
yeah,
that's why essentially you take something that's you don't like that would be so scary. Like imagine alien invasion happening tomorrow, you'd be terrified. But what if they come here and all they want to do is help you? That's something that again probably up until this time hadn't been seen on the screen before, or probably in books somewhere, but just in media,
yeah,
like visual media, that probably hasn't been done before.
yeah. I'm even thinking of like the Twilight Zone. there's that famous episode called "How to Serve Humans," and when the aliens come, they have this book called "How to Serve Humans," and all of the humans think that it's a book about how aliens can help us, but they're using "serve" in like the sense of like
actually serve, like here.
Yeah, like serve to eat, like how to prepare humans for consumption. uh, which is kind of hilarious, like thinking about it. Like that episode is just one huge joke. But yeah, even like the Twilight Zone, like you said, I'm sure there's a book out there, but it's nothing that really like penetrated the culture in the way that that Close Encounters has. There's nothing out there that was like just hopeful for, you know, what again, what that, not even invasion, but just contact would look like. But then, after this movie, and we'll get into it in recommendations, perhaps, is, the kinds of movies that are definitely inspired by this, or probably wouldn't exist without the existence of this movie, where, in the last 40 plus years since this movie has been released, we have been able to explore, some of those ideas in a more hopeful way. There are obviously still movies that are just straight up about invasion, and, destruction, but there are those hopeful ones as well. And, like with this one, some of them can sort of teeter on that line of ambiguity of, okay, is this going to be a happy alien movie, or is this going to be an alien invasion movie where they totally, destroy the earth?
Yeah, because if you really, we could get into the recommendations if you want. But Spielberg has made multiple alien movies, so
Yeah.
and all of them tell a different story. So it's, I think he likes the idea of the unknown, and what you can do with it. Because he's also, they made a Twilight Zone movie, and he directed a segment of that. So he likes
Oh,
the
yeah.
weirdly out of
Yeah.
worldly things. So yeah.
I forgot about that. Well, this does seem like a good point for us to transition into recommendations. But before we do that, I just want to make sure that you don't have any other thoughts or, topics about the movie itself that you wanted to bring up.
The only other thing I would say is the scene with when Richard Dreyfuss first encounters the aliens when he's in his car. Fantastic scene. Love that scene. I just want to say it's great.
Absolutely amazing. I do love the scene when they're all waiting by the like highway on the side of the road for the aliens to come back, and that guy has a sign that says "Stop and be friendly."
Yeah. Again, he's telling you to communicate. Just stop and be friendly.
Yeah, that's like the whole point of the movie,
He's telling you the movie right there. It's on the nose, but some audiences don't pick that up. They're like, "Oh, look at this
No.
guy."
Yeah. And it's a lesson, right, that you can apply to everything. You can apply to like your everyday life. You can apply to like how we should approach like other people in the world. Like your personal close relationships, all that good stuff. If your marriage is bad, just communicate.
Yeah.
if you meet someone from a foreign galaxy, or even like a foreign land, a foreign state, just, if you're a Yankee fan and you meet a Boston Red Sox fan, just communicate, because it might not be that bad. I think that's what he's getting at. I think that's the thesis of the movie.
I don't know if that would go over well with Red Sox and Yankees fans.
They just got to watch Close Encounters a few more times,
and they'll be friends.
We'll be able to solve that rivalry. Yeah, exactly. I love it. Well, if you don't have anything else, this seems like a good time for us to get into our recommendations.
Perfect. I'm ready.
Let's do it. So, just in case there are any new listeners out there, we'll run through quickly the rules for recommendations. So, for every movie that we introduce into the canon, we also recommend 3 things to check out if you like said movie. One of those things has to be another movie. and the other two things can be anything else. They can also be movies. They can be music, bands, TV shows, a single episode of a TV show, a book, a comic book, a painting, uh, a, a you know a sightseeing tour, anything, a restaurant. We like to get really weird. We like to get creative. We like to we like to stretch the recommendations as far as possible. The only rule is that for any movies that are recommended, we don't recommend anything that is already in the canon, and we have a strict 3 recommendation policy, 3 and only 3. So, yeah. Otherwise, I think we can jump in. Pat, we'll go. You'll give your first one. I'll give my first one, and then we'll just kick it back and forth. So, whenever you're ready, give us your first recommendation.
Perfect. So I chose 3 movies. So my first recommendation
Nice.
might be a little on the nose, but I chose the movie Contact by Robert Zemeckis, an entirely movie about communicating with aliens,
I
which
love that
is
movie.
really, really, really on the nose of essentially kind of what this movie is trying to say. But I think it's great, and a great connection. Spielberg, Zemeckis, best friends.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's my first recommendation is Contact.
dude. I think I recommended that movie a few episodes ago. You know what? I recommended it for Silence of the Lambs because Jodie Foster, Queen.
No,
Um,
yes,
but I was not familiar with Contact for a while, and I was on a flight last year, and I was flipping through all the movies, and it was like Shazam, Black Adam, like Wonder Woman 84, Ant-Man, Quantumania. And then I saw this movie Contact, and I was like, I've never heard of this, but I might check it out. And I throw it on. I see Queen Jodie Foster. I see young Matthew McConaughey. And the movie is amazing. And I'm sitting on this plane like, hey, any of you guys ever see Contact? This movie kicks ass.
it's a really. I mean, it is kind of a long movie, but
Hmm.
a lot like if you like really like are watching it, you're like, this movie is paced incredibly well. And
Hmm.
again, there is in that movie a kind of a family dynamic loss. She loses her father.
Yeah.
I that movie resembles a lot of Spielberg like kind of tropes that this movie does, like Close Encounters, is in there's this family dynamic thing that she's always missing. She's always trying to contact something that isn't there anymore
Yeah.
in her life, but she thinks it's out there in the world, in the universe. And I think that's to me like it's like the idea of contact just outside in the universe, but you can also you're still searching for that contact for human, essentially being a human. Is that's why I think this would pair very nicely with Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's a perfect recommendation. I love that pick. For my first recommendation, I've been really excited to recommend this movie. I've been waiting for the not the right movie, but the right enough movie to recommend this for. A movie that came out pretty recently, but I feel like it's very Spielbergian in its structure, in the way that it sort of plays out. I think it's also a movie about aliens coming to Earth. It does play out a little differently. It's not as hopeful as something like Contact or Close Encounters, but I do still think that it is extremely Spielbergian in a lot of really fun ways. My first recommendation is Jordan Peele's Nope.
Great movie.
Love
Great
that
movie.
movie. Absolutely
I,
adore it. And the more I
I
think
need to
about that
rewatch.
movie, the more I love it.
I need to rewatch it because I have only seen it once in theaters, and I own it, but I
Hmm.
just I've watched too many damn movies, and I need to rewatch that.
It's so
But
good.
yeah,
I saw it in
that would
theaters and I was like,
pair.
this is pretty good. And then I watched it again at home and I was like, oh, this is really rad. And just the more I think about it, it's it's like a really amazing piece of filmmaking, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
No, I 100% agree. And again, that is a different take on the alien invasion in a way where it's they're not really there to do what Close Encounters is trying to do. So
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
yeah. Which actually leads me into my second recommendation, which is another alien invasion movie. Clearly there's a,
There's a
a
theme.
there's a theme here. And my second recommendation is M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. Um,
Nice. I
and
love that movie.
I chose this movie because it's the exact opposite of Close Encounters, as in, yes, there is a loss within the family, but that family is a tight unit fighting against an outerworldly thing that is coming there to actually try and break them up and destroy them. And I think it's a perfect pairing of what if now Spielberg takes that same, because at the time, at this time, with after Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs, then he did The Village. He was like, a lot of people were saying this guy's the next Steven Spielberg. So because he had the
Yeah.
same type of family dynamic going on in a lot of his movies. And I said, okay, so you take the idea of Close Encounters, where it's like an alien invasion, but it's a family that broke down, and then it's about communication in general. Like at the end, what if we did it? This
Mhm.
family unit is very tight, very tight. They're going to stick together essentially, and then this alien invasion is going to try and come and break them up. So I think it's a perfect kind of pairing. It's like the
Yeah.
same type of idea, but you flip it, and it's the exact opposite of what's happening in Close Encounters.
I love that. I had it on my list of potential movies to recommend, and I think another way that it mirrors Close Encounters is they're both movies about faith, and Close
Mm-hmm.
Encounters starts off as someone who is just he experiences something and then he's chasing like where that faith takes him. Like he has so much faith that there's more to what he saw and felt that he just continuously chases it. And whereas Signs is about a guy who has lost all of his faith and he's denying it for so much of the movie, and then at the end, based on what he sees, he's finally able to reclaim it. So you've got the family dynamic sort of on mirror ends of each other with these two movies, and then you've also got that faith thing. So I totally love that pick. I wasn't even thinking about the family stuff, so I love
Mm-hmm.
that you brought that into it.
Yeah, I think it would pair very well.
Yeah.
Because I remember I just like thinking of movies, and then I just stared at the poster, and I was like, because then whenever I'm trying to watch like a movie, like I want to pick a movie to watch in my collection, the problem I have
Mhm.
is I will play the entire movie in my head, and then I don't want to watch it anymore. So, but I was like looking at Signs, and I was like, oh, this is kind of like Close Encounters, but like flipped, like opposite,
Yeah,
complete opposite of that movie. So I think it'd make a great double feature, honestly. And who
that's
doesn't love
great.
alien invasion movies? So
Yeah, seriously. That's an awesome second pick. I'm glad you chose that. I'm going to veer off slightly, but not too far, because I'm still going to go with something that is alien invasion related. Um, but that's really the only connection point that it has to Close Encounters, and I'm going to go with I guess it's a series. I'm going to go with the SNL sketches with Kate McKinnon, where she's just
those
talking
are
about
great.
her her experiences with alien abductions.
Those are great.
Specifically, the I think there's either two or three with Ryan Gosling, and
Mhm.
he cannot keep it together for like the life of him. Like he is losing it. But I get it. She is like Kate McKinnon is like that's the most hilarious that she is on SNL, I think. Um so very loose connection, just two alien invasion things, but some of the funniest SNL sketches of like the last 5 or so years.
Oh yeah, the whole premise of that is just so good. How they just have basic like alien interactions. Oh, they wanted to test us, and like we were working
Yeah.
communication with them, and she's like, "What? Like that's not what I did." Like
Yeah.
just, and then she has like the most ridiculous stuff that they were doing to her.
Yeah. Oh my god. And all the different like phrases that she has for, her private parts are
Oh
like
yeah, it's
absolutely
so good.
outrageous.
Oh yeah, it's so
So
good.
funny.
Great pick.
Sweet.
So
What's your third one?
my third one is definitely out there. It has no alien invasion whatsoever. It is another Steven Spielberg movie, but I think what connects this to Close Encounters is the idea of communication, and it's Spielberg's Bridge of Spies. Um,
Mm,
that's my third choice. It may be a stretch, but
I like it.
that entire movie is essentially about communicating. But obviously, there's no alien invasion, but you're communicating at the time, these US, Russia, huge powers that had the ability to cause utter destruction and destroy everything. But your entire movie's relying on communication between these two things. And essentially it's probably a stretch. But I think
No,
just
no, not at
like
all.
that idea of like, especially when at the end of that movie when they're on the bridge and there's like that much tension and just all it is relying on is like there's no like physical fighting in this. It's just all relying on how you're going to speak to the other people in order to make something happen, which again relates to how it can be, how am I going to speak to my father to make something happen between him and my mother so they can reconnect. And
Hmm.
again, Spielberg subconsciously about communication. He probably when he rewatches Bridge of Spies doesn't see that, oh, again, I'm bringing up communication and how it's very
Yeah.
important. And again, that he is a very tight family dynamic in there within that movie, but you don't see that family dynamic. So what's interesting about that is this father leaves and essentially lies to his family what he's going to do, but he's doing something good, like has a good outcome as he comes back to his
Yeah.
family and his family realizes that, oh, like my father is actually a very good person, because even though he communicated with someone who's a Russian spy and is clearly committing treason, he still sees that guy as a human being, and he still negotiated
Hmm.
to get someone else on the other side that is also a human being back to essentially the swap. And when it comes to communication, I think it pairs well. I just chose it because it's Spielberg too. So got
Nice.
can never go wrong with the Spielberg double
Yeah.
features.
I've actually never seen it. So I'm gonna have to
It's
add
good.
that to my
It's
watch list.
when I first watched it, I was like, it was solid. But I think the more that I
Hmm.
have seen it, I realized like because it was marketed as like this going to be this spy kind of like thriller, and like Tom Hanks is
Yeah.
gonna like, and obviously you're gonna market it so you want people to come see the movie. But the more you
Yeah.
like watch it, it's more about him connecting, like essentially just characters connecting completely opposite parts. One's Russian, one's just a American like business lawyer or something, and
Hmm.
it's just how it's all like all essentially all about communication, all about talking, and you can connect with somebody that is completely different from you in real life. You can connect with an alien, and
Yeah.
look at ET. He connects with an alien. They can't even speak to each other. So
Can connect with aliens. We can connect with Russians. The possibilities are endless.
all we need, possibilities are endless.
That's like a cool. That's like that. Is that 2000 Spielberg? I feel like that was an
It was
interesting
like
run for him.
2015, I think that came out. It was like the
Okay.
mid 2010s. Like, yeah, he had an interesting run in the 2010s. He made
Yeah. Is that around the
like
time when he made like Munich and stuff?
Munich was 2005. So he made Munich and War of the Worlds in the same year. They came out the same year.
Oh shit.
Um, he's done that a lot because then he
Yeah.
made in 2011 he had Tintin and Warhorse come out the same year. Um, and then I think after that he made Lincoln, and then this was his movie after Lincoln, I think. Um,
Nice. Yeah.
and
I'm
then
looking.
he
I'm
made like
looking at it
the
now.
BF, then I think he made like the BFG, which is definitely
Yeah.
pretty low on my Spielberg, especially
Yeah.
rewatchability. But that is kind of a children's movie. Um, but he had a couple run there with Mark Rylance for a bit. He's working with him for a while.
Yeah.
uh, but then he made like
Nice.
again, he made when he was making the post, he essentially was doing post production on set for Ready Player One. Like some of the cast and writers would be like, he'd be handed like the tablet with Ready Player One like test footage, and he's doing that, and then I'll just hand that off, and then he'll go back to directing like Meryl Streep on the set of the post. It's like, and you're like just watching like this guy's insane.
Yeah.
Like he's just that
Insane.
good at it. Yeah. But
Still,
I mean,
for
that's
me, I think I bring it up every Spielberg episode, but the fact that he was shooting Schindler's List, and then he would, at the end of the day, after shooting would wrap, he would just go and edit Jurassic Park, and then
yeah,
both
that's
movies get
crazy.
released in the same calendar
'Cause
year. Like,
he even said, I think he said like to George Lucas, he was like, "Hey, can you?" Because George Lucas helped edit a lot of Jurassic Park because he essentially
hmm
couldn't do it because he's on the set
hmm
for. So like the bare bones of that movie was actually George Lucas that
yeah,
actually kind of put that together. Which
that's
is funny
amazing.
because then
Yeah,
George Lucas sees the dinosaur shot for the first time, and James Cameron sees that and like, okay, fuck, now I can make these movies
yeah,
because look at that. Like,
yeah.
like,
Because look at what this guy's doing.
yeah,
Yeah. Also, just the idea that he needed the dinosaurs at the end of the day to, like distract him from the depressing subject matter
oh
of the
yeah,
other movie that he was making. Just,
yeah.
you know,
He's always said that he's only ever really made two movies, and they're both for his parents. One, his mom is Schindler's List is for his mom, and Saving Private Ryan is for his dad.
for his dad. Yeah.
Yeah. Which like
Uh,
there was another podcast. I'm not going to bring it up. It's kind of a popular
mm,
podcast, but they essentially rewatched the IMDb top 250.
mhm.
And when they got to I had to turn the Saving Private Ryan episode off because I was like, because they were like kind of ripping on it and saying that Spielberg
Yeah.
just wanted to make more Oscars, get more Oscars, and I was just like, I can't like, and it's no fault to them. Maybe they just don't know
Yeah.
the back of that, but that was a really personal film for like him and his father. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
and once I know that, that movie hits me like a lot more, especially the ending. Um,
Yeah.
but and it's I don't know how you could think that's
I
not
feel like
his best directorial effort.
he talks a lot about I feel like, I mean, all of his movies in many ways are about or for his parents. Those two
Mhm.
very specifically. Obviously, West Side Story and end credits are for dad.
Oh yeah,
And then The Fablemans is the most obvious movie
yeah.
for his parents of all time. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so we don't want to bash any other podcasts, but I will say here at the Canon, instead of going through the IMDb top 250, we've created our own list of essential movies. And instead of bashing those movies, we celebrate them and we praise them.
And that's what we
You
should be
know,
doing.
that's what we should be doing because movies are rad and we love them and we want to continue to celebrate them. All that
100%.
being said, I'm going to give my last recommendation. I had a few different movies written down, including Signs. So I'm kind of happy that you mentioned it because it now affords me the opportunity to recommend this other movie, which I kind of wanted to hold off on recommending for another episode, but this feels like the right time to do it. So I mentioned before at the top of the episode that I listened to your War of the Worlds commentary podcast episode. I spent much of this last weekend rewatching Mission Impossible movies. Tom
Mhm.
Cruise might be my favorite actor, as problematic as that is. I absolutely adore him.
He's a
And
great actor.
one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies, and this was from like, I think we're around the same age, so we probably had similar experiences with this. But this movie came out at the perfect time for me in my Tom Cruise fandom, in my movie fandom, and it's another great. I just mentioned the movie, so we all know what it is. It's War of the Worlds. I'm recommending War of the Worlds because it's awesome. It's Spielberg, it's aliens, it's Tom Cruise, and it kicks so much ass. So if you haven't seen War of the Worlds, watch it. Watch it with Pat's commentary podcast on, in the background running while you're watching it. It'll be a great viewing experience. The movie kicks so much ass. I just laid out all the reasons for why it's a good pairing with Close Encounters. So yeah, War of the Worlds.
There was a
What's not
period
to
in
love?
time. There was a period in time when that was like my favorite movie on the planet. I mentioned it in the podcast, but I saw that movie 9 times in theaters, like 9 times. I was so obsessed with it. My mom bought me like the DVD and I was like, this isn't the collector's edition. I wanted the collector's edition. And I was like so mean to her. And she went out and got me the collector's edition as well. I don't know why I was so obsessed with that movie. Like, and it's not even
Yeah.
my favorite movie of all time, but like it at that time, I was just so, and I think that's when I really became like a Spielberg guy, was War of the
Yeah.
Worlds. That was like the one where I was like, I could watch this movie any day of the week, any day.
It's
I'm
a
putting that
super
thing on.
rewatchable movie. I mean, for like a 13-year-old guy like who's getting into movies,
Mm-hmm.
that's like the perfect one to watch. I didn't see it 9 times in theaters, but I have seen
You're
it.
missing out. You're missing out.
I have seen it many times. I think I only saw it once in theaters. I did, however, see The Day After Tomorrow about 7 times in theaters,
Oh my
oddly
god, I
enough.
love that movie. I love that movie.
It's like kind of a guilty pleasure, but I adore that movie.
Oh,
That's
it's
like,
great. I think there's a period, man, the 2000s, like, if you really go back and watch it, you're like, "Man, these blockbusters are better than the ones today." Like,
yeah,
they're like, they
these
have some
disaster
sort of
movies were
like,
great.
I love, like, 2012, like, yeah, I'll watch that again. Like, hell yeah, this movie's
Yeah.
so dumb, but I love it. Like, I wanna
So
watch
much fun.
John Cusack, like, drive a limo at 100 miles an hour while the buildings are collapsing. Like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
why
that
I go
sounds
to the
rad.
movies. This is why I
Yeah.
go to the movies. Like,
This is why we love cinema. Amazing. Well, Pat, this has been an absolute blast. Before we say our final goodbyes, let's run through our recommendations one more time, super quick for those who maybe didn't catch it on the front end and want to write down any of our picks. So just give us your 3 recommendations. 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom.
So I had Contact, Signs, and Bridge of Spies.
Amazing. I've got Jordan Peele's Nope. I've got the SNL sketches where Kate McKinnon talks about being abducted by aliens. And I've got Tom Cruise x Steven Spielberg, War of the Worlds. Pat Brennan, thank you so much. This has been an absolute blast. Thank you for joining the show. Again, listeners, check out Pat's show. The commentary, you can get it on Apple Podcasts. You can get it on Spotify. Pat, where can folks find you on Twitter to find pictures of your movie room and just an overall pleasant, online presence?
You can find me on Twitter at PATTBB8. Now, when I typed BB8, I did not realize I was making a Star Wars reference. I'm not that much of a Star Wars fan. I was just like, when I hit enter, I was like, whatever, it's fine. So I am PATTBB8, but I'm not like it's not a BB8 fan account. Don't worry, you're fine.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah. Do you have any upcoming episodes of the commentary that folks should be on the lookout for?
So last week I put out Super 8, another Alien movie. Go figure.
Nice.
Which is basically like a Steven Spielberg made movie.
Yeah. An ode to Spielberg. Yeah.
Today we just recorded Collateral, so that should be coming out very soon. And in the pipeline we have Back to the Future and Catch Me If You Can. So a lot happening this year for the commentary, hopefully.
I love it. All great movies. Yeah, check out Pat on Twitter. Check out the show wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back here next week on the Canon doing our Valentine's Day special. So we will, of course, be talking about one of the most romantic movies of all time, Misery.
Classic.
I'll be joined by a big crew of some of your favorite Saw contributors. So we will be back next week with that. Until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll see you in the wasteland.